My name is Leon Smith. I am the Executive Director at Citizens for Juvenile Justice, and I have the pleasure of being your MC for today's briefing on an act to promote public safety and better outcomes for young adults, also known as Raise the Age. Senate 1061, 1923, would bring a bold and transformative approach and needed improvement to the way our justice system interacts with young people who are emerging into adulthood and improve upon the incredibly poor outcomes this population currently experiences in the adult criminal justice system. We are here today because outcome data shows that 18, 19, and 20-year-olds have by far the highest recidivism rates in the entire adult criminal justice system, a rate 30 percentage points higher than their same age counterparts in the juvenile system. Our legislative champions in the House and the Senate, Leader O'Day, Representative Cruz, and Senator Crighton, saw these numbers. They saw the fact that the status quo isn't working and that there's a better way forward for both our young people and the safety of our communities. And they filed legislation that would shift this population of young people into the juvenile system where they would receive a more developmentally appropriate approach that has a proven track record of addressing their needs while also holding them accountable, producing lower crime, higher rates of educational attainment, and better long-term outcomes that our young people deserve. I want to quickly thank all of our co-sponsors. We appreciate you, your support, and your allyship for making today possible. And now I will bring up the sponsors of this critically important legislation to formally welcome you, starting with Leader O'Day.
Good morning, everyone. It's really great to be here with everyone. This is unbelievable. This is an unbelievable turnout of young people, which is what this is all about. And I'm so happy to see the senator here with me, and I think Rep. Cruz will be along as well. But as Leon was saying, this is a bill that, I'm a social worker by trade. Began my career back in 1982 with the Department of Children and Families, at that time with DSS. And, I had the opportunity to work with a lot of young people, work with a lot of young families, and work with families. And, in my own young adulthood, adolescence, guess what? I made some mistakes. And I think young people have, that potential because of things that are going on in our lives. Our brains are not yet fully developed. We act instinctively. We do things that maybe out of impulse, if we had taken that half a second to say, maybe I shouldn't have done that, things might have had a different outcome. But regrettably, that's not always the case. And we're really here to try to redirect those situations and really bring forward folks that might have a little hiccup along the way in their teens, right? And to turn that corner and go forward and become, really productive members of our society. What aggravates me, and I hear it sometimes from, some law enforcement folks, that, we're being soft on crime. This has nothing to do with being soft on crime. Let's be real clear on that. That's not what this is about. This is about, recognizing who we're dealing with, young people, recognizing that when a mistake has been made, we can correct that. We can educate. We can get folks into counseling. We can do a lot of things at the 17, 18, 19-year-old level that are not happening to folks when they're 20, 21, 22, and 23. And so this is our attempt to sort of turn the boat around, turn the ship around, and make this a really, change in how we deal with, delinquencies and what have you. So, this bill's been around. I had it here when I started buying. It's been around. We really need to get moving on this. It has to. We need desperately to make these changes. I've spoken way too long already. I really want to commend everyone, thank everyone who was here today, because it really is this kind of activity that is going to move the needle. And, you know, I just want to say one last thing with all the young folks that are here. You represent about 20% populations, but no question in my mind, I am gonna need each and every one of you, and anyone at my age, maybe a little younger, Senator's a little older. You're 100% of our future, so please, on your own, do not forget that. We rely on you all, believe me when I tell you that. So thank you all for being here. My colleagues are here to hear what you have to say. Your stories are incredibly important in moving, and don't be afraid. Nice to see you there, Representative. I've spoken enough. Thank you all for being here. Have a great day here at the State House, and let's get this thing finished, okay?
Thank you so much, Leader O'Day. I want to take a moment and acknowledge Representative Moran. Thank you so much for joining us today. Next, I want to bring up our Senate sponsor, Senator Crighton.
Thanks so much, Leon. Appreciate it. Appreciate the introduction. Leader O'Day, I need the podium. I need a microphone. I'm not as powerful a speaker as you are. And it's the second speech I've given with the rep today, and the second time I've been called old. I don't know what's going on. I need a haircut, get rid of some of the grays, but we'll see. But thank you to everyone here, all the affiliate organizations, part of the coalition. It's such an honor. I'll be the Senate sponsor of the bill. Obviously, Leader O'Day has been fighting this good fight for a long time, continues to do so, as you just heard, and so honored to join my neighbor over in Salem, Representative Manny Cruz. I'm Brendan Crighton. I'm the state senator from Lynn, and I don't want to echo too much what's already been said. I think we all know in our hearts, and we all know from our experience, that when you have better access to education, to training, to therapy, to just a better environment overall, you're going to have better outcomes for our young folks. And it's not just for them as individuals, it's for their families and really the entire community. So we're out there making a case for raise the age. It certainly is about the individuals, but this is for Massachusetts, this is for the entire Commonwealth. These better outcomes lead to better results for all of us. And you heard some of the statistics earlier, but looking back in 2013, when we first raised the age up to 17-year-olds, we have data now. We have facts and information. We have tons of data, too much almost. It's overwhelming, but 44% reduction in recidivism. And you'll hear many more stats later on. But with those stats, it's also so important to tell more stories about your community, about yourself, and the impact that this could have on you and really on all of us. So I'm so honored to have filed this, really working with Senate President Karen Spilka. She's been fighting for this for a long time, and she cares so deeply about juvenile justice issues that she formed a special Senate committee, which I'm proud to chair, which is kind of unusual, but it's been a great opportunity for me to get out in the field, learn more from folks, many continue to bolster our case and to get this done. Thank you so much for your advocacy, and have a wonderful day here at the State House. Thank you.
And next, our third co-sponsor, Representative Manny Cruz.
Good morning. I'm going to do that again. Good morning. Now you're with me. It's such an honor to be here today as we try to raise the age to our colleagues. First of all, House side and Senator Brendan Crighton, they've been incredibly strong partners. I'm really deeply committed to this issue, and as the state rep, first Afro-Indigenous Latino. Thank you. I know just how close one mistake can just change a young person's life. And I think about this bill and what it means to so many in my community that didn't get afforded a second chance, that ended up in the adult prison system, and now they're working their way back into society. But I know that when I talk to young people in my community who have made those mistakes, those that were afforded second opportunities for diversion and all the other interventions that we've been able to create as a legislature, that they're thriving. And we need that to be the story of every single young person in our Commonwealth who makes a mistake, because your voices, your lives, they matter, and they matter to us. And I'm really so proud to have worked with Leader O'Day and Senator Crighton to secure the endorsement of the Massachusetts Black and Latino Legislative Caucus. They fully support this bill. It's one of our top priorities for this session. So together, I hope that we can continue to do the work of informing the rest of our colleagues about the impacts that this bill would have on young people, on families, and really the future of our Commonwealth. So I thank you all for being here today. I look forward to being in the fight with you, and let's go raise the age.
I want to take a moment and also acknowledge Representative Bowen. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And again, such a major thank you to our, I'm not even going to say co-sponsors, our Leader O'Day, Senator Crighton, Representative Cruz, they have been fighting tooth and nail this legislation. And that our young people have truly taken that energy and brought it here to the State House, and we now the honor the phenomenal panel of experts that this issue today. And I'm going to start with a true legend, Judge Geraldine Hines. Justice Hines is a native of Scott, Mississippi. She graduated from Tougaloo College in 1968 and the University of Wisconsin Law School in 1971. Upon graduation, she became a staff attorney at the Mass Law Reform Institute, engaging in prisoners' rights litigation. And then from 1973 to 1977, she practiced criminal law with the Roxbury Defenders Committee, eventually becoming the director of the committee. After an MIT fellowship researching policy initiatives to address the issue of police misconduct in communities of color, she entered private practice in 1982, appearing in state and federal courts on criminal, administrative, labor, and family law matters. She continued to litigate civil rights cases, including employment discrimination and police misconduct claims, as a founding partner in the first law firm of women of color in the New England region. Governor Duci appointed Justice Hines as an Associate Justice of the Superior 2001, and then Governor Patrick appointed her as an Associate Justice of the Appeals Court in 2013. She was appointed to the Mass Supreme Judicial Court a year later, and again, truly a giant, not just in the legal community, but our community at large. So please give a warm welcome to Justice Hines. Yes.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Leader O'Day, Senator Crighton, Representative Cruz, for this opportunity to participate in this briefing on Raise the Age legislation. It is my honor to be invited here to offer a perspective that has been shaped by 50+ years of experience as a defense attorney, civil rights attorney, and judge. I have not been active on this issue since my retirement from the Supreme Judicial Court in 2017, but over the course of my career as an advocate and a jurist, I have come to understand the tension between the public safety imperative of accountability for children who violate the law and the fundamental principle that children deserve the chance to learn from their mistakes without societal condemnation for the entirety of their lives. My appreciation of the need to navigate this tension began in 1991. I was appointed to represent a 16-year-old who was charged in the murders of 11-year-old Charles Copney and 15-year-old Corey Grant. These killings shocked the city and ultimately led to a change in the law because of how these cases were resolved in the juvenile court. At the time, a juvenile charged with murder could have his case resolved in the juvenile court If after a transfer hearing, the juvenile court judge determined that he was amenable to rehabilitation. In this case, the juvenile judge reached divergent outcomes, retaining the juvenile who pulled the trigger in the juvenile court, but transferring my client, one of two alleged accomplices, to the Superior Court for trial. This outcome led to a predictable outrage, and ultimately the law was changed, the Copley Grant law, to require a trial in the Superior Court for a youth charged with murder. As a defense lawyer representing a 16-year-old who, if convicted, faced the certainty of being sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, I saw firsthand the consequences of the law's unwillingness to judge a child as a child rather than an adult. Thankfully, in the years since, our thinking has evolved to allow us to focus on the ways in which we can elevate the goal of rehabilitation over punishment for youthful offenders. This legislation reflects a commitment to that aspiration. As a former judge faced with difficult sentencing decisions in cases involving criminal defendants under the age of 21, I had to manage this tension between rehabilitation and punishment. So I ask for your indulgence as I offer the perspective of judges, key players in the system who never really get to have a voice in what you do as legislators. After all, judges are expected to comply with the law, whatever it is, regardless of their point of view on whether the law is good, necessary, or effective. At the same time, judges are not automatons, and of course, they recognize the constraints of their authority, but they care about what they are asked to do in the name of justice. And it should go without saying that they are in a unique position to see the gaps in the system that make it difficult to resolve the tension I referenced early, advancing the cause of justice for youthful offenders while at the same time ensuring public safety. As a retired judge, I am presuming to give voice to what I imagine to be the views of the judges who accept with enthusiasm the obligation to interpret and apply the law to the best of their abilities. If the judges who are called upon to preside over the cases of the 18 to 20-year-olds in the district court or the Superior Court could speak to you, I believe they would say that the law should take account of what we all know about adolescent brain development, and that the law should not require them to ignore what the science tells us is true. Under current law, offenders in the 18 to 20-year-old cohort are automatically processed in the adult criminal system, regardless of their level of maturity or the circumstances that contributed to their conduct. This framework limits judicial discretion and constrains the range of sentencing options available. In many cases, the choices are narrow and heavily weighted toward punitive outcomes, even where rehabilitation would better serve both the individual and the community. Judges understand and want to follow the science when they are presented with cases where the accused is in the 18 to 20-year-old cohort, but they are obliged to stay within the boundaries the legislature has created. The Raise the Age law would allow judges who want to do the right thing by this class of youth to do just that. These judges would have the tools, which include structured probation with individualized conditions, access to educational and vocational programming, behavioral health treatment, and family-centered interventions. These options allow judges to address the underlying causes of offending behavior rather than focusing solely on punishment. The Superior Court judge does not relish the challenge of fashioning a fair and just disposition for a 19-year-old who probably wouldn't be in her court if the juvenile judge had the opportunity to resolve the matter with access to all of the available options for disposition in the juvenile court. Sentencing a 19-year-old to an adult facility where educational and clinical resources are difficult to impossible to access is a losing proposition, and they know that they are likely presiding over a future recidivism statistic. Providing developmentally appropriate interventions at this stage has been shown to reduce recidivism. When young people are given the opportunity to remain connected to school, employment, and family, they are far more likely to become productive members of society. Conversely, early exposure to the adult correctional system can increase the likelihood of future involvement. By all accounts from legal scholars and social science researchers, juvenile court judges have done an exemplary job in managing the trust and discretion they have been granted to deal with juveniles. Recidivism rates lower in the juvenile court than in the district court or the superior court happen precisely because the juvenile court has the institutional infrastructure and expertise to do what is just and right. In conclusion, let me just say that based on my experience on the bench, this reform would strengthen the ability of judges to impose fair, effective, and developmentally appropriate dispositions while improving the odds for long-term public safety. This legislation would equip judges with the tools necessary to make more informed, individualized, and effective decisions. It reflects both modern scientific understanding and the practical experience of the courtroom. I leave you with the hope that these observations and those of the true experts on the issue that you will hear from in a moment will be helpful in building a consensus to pass the Raise the Age Act. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Justice Hines. I want to take a moment and acknowledge Senator Liz Miranda. Thank you so much for joining us today. For our next panelist, I want to just frame and point out that anytime there is a conversation about young people, the most important voices are those of young people. Because nothing about us without us, and we need to make sure that the voices of our youth are centered in every conversation. And to that end, I want to introduce a young man I've had the honor to get to know over the last few years, Jayden JJ Hernandez. Jayden is a youth advocate and leader from Boston. He's a member of the More Than Words PIY Core Youth Team and is a Jump Leadership Accelerator Fellow in partnership with the Boston Celtics, the 18-time NBA champion Boston Celtics, I might add, and the NBA Social Justice Coalition. He works at the intersection of lived experience and policy to drive real change in system-impacted youth. With More Than Words, Jayden advocates for diversion, prevention, and second chances for young people involved in the justice system. He has spoken at the State House and collaborates with community and government leaders to push policies that create pathways of opportunity, not punishment. And today, he speaks in support of Raise the Age, bringing both his lived experience and commitment to ensuring that no young person is defined by their worst moment. Give it up for Jayden.
Good afternoon. It just hit 12. It's the afternoon. More energy. Come on, come on. Good afternoon. There we go. There we go. My name is Jayden Hernandez. and I'm not supposed to be here. Not in this building, not at this podium, not speaking to you today. Because at one point in my life, I was just another young person who made a mistake. And in a system that often sees mistakes before it sees potential, I could have easily been written off, but I wasn't. I was given something that too many young people never receive: access, opportunity, and people who chose to believe in me, even when I fully didn't even believe in myself yet. That changed everything. Because when you give a young person access to guidance, mentorship, and real support, you don't just change their path, you change their entire future. Through my work at More Than Words, as a Power Is Yours member, I was able to grow, find my voice, and advocate for change. Because of that work, I was accepted into the NBA's Jump Fellowship, which gave me the opportunity to work with the Boston Celtics and learn at the highest level. I went from being a young person who could have been overlooked to standing in rooms I could have never imagined. I spoke up at the Black Men's Conference at Northeastern University, and I was invited into the Eagle Room by Mayor Wu to share my ideas. Those moments didn't happen because I was perfect. They happened because I was given a chance. And that's what Raise the Age represents. And while this issue has been sent to study in the House, and since this has been sent to the study in the House, we have to ask, when young people speak up, are we truly being heard? Or are we being delayed? Because young voice isn't about being invited into the room. It's about being taken seriously when we're already here. Raise the Age isn't just policy. It's a second chance. It's the difference between a young person being placed in an adult prison or being placed in an environment where they can actually grow. Because no youth belongs in adult prison. Yes. You don't reform a young mind by surrounding it with trauma. You don't build a future by taking away hope. If Raise the Age had existed the way we're fighting for it today, my story could have gone very differently. I could have been another statistic, another young person defined forever by a mistake, a moment, instead of supported to grow beyond it. But instead, I was given a chance to learn, a chance to grow, and a chance to prove who I really am. And today I stand before you not as a mistake, but as someone working in my community, advocating for change, and striving to become a leader for the next generation. And I'm not special. There are thousands of young people just like me, with potential, with talent, with something to give to this world. The only question is, will we give them a chance? Because when we invest in young people, when we choose support over punishment, when we choose guidance over isolation, we don't just change lives. We build safer communities. We build stronger futures. So I'll leave you with this. When I say second chance, I want you guys to say real change. That was a perfect cue. Second chance. One more time. Second chance. One more time, second chance. That's how you do it. Thank you, guys.
Give it up to Jayden. And I'm going to uplift something you said. It's not enough to just give kind words and say that you appreciate youth voice. You need to follow through and listen to youth voice, because our young people are going to lead the way for us. Our next esteemed panelist is Detective Captain Lisa Butner, who began her law enforcement career in 1983 as a patrolman and sensitive crime investigator for Harvard University's police department. In 1987, she joined the Metropolitan Police Department, where she worked as a patrolman, drug unit investigator, undercover officer, and academy instructor. Her department consolidated with the Massachusetts State Police, and in 1992, she became a state trooper assigned to uniform patrol. In 1993, she became a homicide investigator with the Middlesex DA's office. She was assigned to the Affirmative Action and Recruitment Unit in 2000. Then in 2003, she was promoted to the rank of sergeant. She was then promoted to the rank of lieutenant in 2012, responsible for overseeing 4 separate troops. In 2019, she was promoted to the rank of detective lieutenant and assigned to the Massachusetts State Police Cadet as a program coordinator. In this role, she developed and implemented a cadet program aimed at increasing diversity in the department. In 2022, she joined the Tufts Police Department, where she currently serves as detective captain in charge of internal affairs, executive protection, and security details, and Title IX investigations and civil rights violations investigations. She is the current president of the Massachusetts chapter of National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, or NOBLE, and she's also the president and co-founder of the MSP One Blue. Truly someone who has done it all within the field of law enforcement, who will now give her perspective on Raise the Age.
Hi there. He gave an overview of my career. I didn't write anything down. I wanted to share my perspectives and some things that I've seen over the course of my career, which started at Harvard University, as you heard. That was the first time, well, I shouldn't say it's the first time, because I grew up during an era where there was busing, and I grew up in an urban area. So I have first-hand knowledge and saw the difference in the disparity in the way that young children of color were treated versus others that grew up in the suburbs. That was reinforced when I went to Harvard University and worked at Harvard University. One of the things, and I wanted to give you examples, was John Harvard. John Harvard's in Harvard Yard. So one of this statute, it was a prank. So anytime Yale, Brown, any of the Dartmouth, any of the Ivy League students came to Harvard, their goal was to paint John Harvard. Okay, you paint John Harvard, and that was part of their prank during the football games. If John Harvard got painted by them, all they did was sandblast John Harvard, and it cost thousands of dollars to sandblast John Harvard. There was one time when a Cambridge and Latin student came and painted John Harvard, their school colors, gold and brown, and they wanted that student locked up, right? That's the first time I saw that. So you're going to charge a young person with this crime that was a felony that could impact them for the rest of their lives, could impact their education, impact their employment opportunities, impact their ability to be in housing. So back in the day, if you were convicted of a felony, I know some of the laws have changed, you couldn't be in public housing. You can't get federal student loans for that education. You can't get certain jobs. And that's still the case today with regard to certain jobs where you have licensing. You know, when you have that felony conviction, it's still the same with housing. So we give these college students opportunities, which is the same age group that you're talking about here. And they're committing some of the same violations. But there's a difference in resources. There's a difference in resources when it comes to suburban communities versus urban communities and college communities. There's a level of resources that may not be available. You have increased number of calls in an urban community, which creates a system where they're working on statistics and CompStat numbers because they have to show the community they're doing something, right? And they don't have the ability and the time that a suburban community or a college community has to spend with each one of those individuals. So their solution is arrest versus spending an additional half an hour, 45 minutes to understand what's behind the actions of this young person. And they don't understand the collateral consequences. And over the 40 plus years I've been in this profession, I've come to understand the collateral consequences of these arrests, and I've learned to deal with them differently. I've learned to deal with young people differently. I've actually learned to deal with things that have to do with writing a ticket, right? That might impact somebody for the next 7 years with their insurance, you know, of towing a car of somebody who couldn't pay the ticket in the first place. So I think we need to look and give some grace to our young people in urban communities and understand the collateral consequences and how it can affect them just beyond that one arrest, and give them the same grace that we give people in suburban communities and that we give college age students who are the exact same age. Okay, so that's where I come from. I'm at a college now. I'm ending my career where I started, and we spend a great deal of time, and we have the resources and we have the support systems in place at these colleges to avoid arrest and not making the arrest. So like Jayden says, I think we need to give some grace to our inner city youth and do the same thing for them. Thank you.
Next up, we have a brilliant litigator and truly a pillar of the juvenile defense community, my longtime friend and colleague, Duci Goncalves, who is the Deputy Chief Counsel of the Youth Advocacy Division of the Committee for Public Counsel Services. She earned her BS in Rehabilitation and Human Services from Boston University and her JD from Northeastern University School of Law. She has dedicated her professional career to being a public defender. And her role is, give it up for the public defenders. In her role as Deputy Chief Counsel, she provides leadership, training, support, and oversight to 9 staff offices across Massachusetts and approximately 300 private attorneys, accepting appointments for cases in juvenile courts. Prior to becoming Deputy Chief Counsel, she was the attorney in charge of the Quincy Brockton office of YAD for over 10 years, where she supervised attorneys and social workers while maintaining her own caseload. In 2010 and 2011, she worked as a staff attorney for Suffolk University School of Law's Juvenile Justice Center, supervising law students and representing youth in the Boston Juvenile Court and assisting in the teaching of a juvenile defender clinical class. She's also a recipient of the Mass Bar Association's 2012 Access to Justice Defender Award. No one can tell you more about the workings of the juvenile court than Duci. For a warm round of applause.
Thank you, Leon. And I just have to say, it is such a privilege to be on a panel with incredible speakers such as Justice Hines, Jayden, and is it Detective now? Lisa? I'm gonna call you Lisa. We're friends now. We just met 5 minutes ago, but we're friends, Lisa. But really, it is an honor to be with all of you here today, as well as everyone in this room. This is an incredible room. As Leon said, I am the Deputy Chief Counsel of the Youth Advocacy Division of the Committee for Public Counsel Services. It's a lot to say, but we're the State Public Defender's Office, and I oversee the Juvenile Defender Unit. Over the past 20 years, I've had the privilege of standing beside young people in courtrooms across Massachusetts, listening to their stories, similar stories as Jayden talked about a little earlier, advocating for their futures and fighting for a juvenile legal system that truly serves them. There is a common misperception that juvenile court does not hold young people accountable, but that view misunderstands what accountability looks like, especially when it comes to adolescents and juvenile court. Real accountability in the juvenile system is not the absence of consequences. It is the presence of meaningful ones. In the adult system, accountability often is defined by punishment alone, incarceration, isolation, and a permanent record. But we know that young people who are still developing, that kind of punishment does little to address the underlying causes of the behavior or to prevent it from happening again. In the juvenile system, there is accountability, which may look different, but it is more effective. It means requiring a young person to confront the impact of their actions, to take responsibility in concrete ways, to actively repair harm where possible. That can include structured probation, mental health services, community-based services, restorative justice programs that bring youth and their victims together when appropriate, and close court supervision, and in some instances, detention. But in a facility such as the Department of Youth Services, where they employ a positive youth development approach. It is also important to note that Massachusetts has the Youthful Offender Statute, it's commonly referred to as the YO statute, and that would continue to apply under this legislation. Serious offenses, including those involving firearms or the threat or infliction of serious bodily injury, would still be subject to the YO eligibility, and the dispositions available to juvenile judges do actually include adult sentences, which can include state prison time. Raising the age does not eliminate consequences for serious offenses if there's an adjudication. What we see both in research and in practice is that the juvenile court system consistently produces better developmental and public safety outcomes than the adult system, and it already works successfully with 18 to 20-year-olds in several contexts. Young people in the juvenile system are far more likely to access services they need and to desist from the behavior that resulted in them being involved in the system in the first place. The juvenile court is uniquely designed to do this work. We heard that from Chief Justice Hines. It has the tools, the expertise, and the framework to respond to adolescent behavior in a way that promotes both responsibility and rehabilitation. It is not a lesser system. It is a more effective system for this population of youth. And importantly, this is not an either-or choice. Expanding juvenile court to include 18 to 20-year-olds through the Raise the Age legislation does not mean that we're abandoning accountability for young people. It means aligning our response with what we know about adolescent development. Young adolescents in that age range are more similar to youth that are already in the juvenile legal system. They're similar in the way that they make decisions, respond to risk, and grow with the right interventions. They are better served in a system designed with appropriate developmental responses. At the same time, we can continue to improve approaches that better serve those who are in their mid-20s. We can do both. We can have a juvenile system that holds people meaningfully accountable and provides them access to services and supports that they need, while also maintaining an adult system that is appropriately for individuals. Ultimately, if we want a system that works for young people, we must focus on what actually is currently working within the juvenile court system. Real accountability is not about how harsh the punishment is. It's about whether it reduces harm, repairs damage, prevents it from happening again, and gives young people the tools that they need to succeed in our communities. That is what the juvenile system is built to do. And when we get it right, the result is not only better outcomes for young people, but it's greater safety, stronger communities, and a justice system that earns the trust of everyone it serves. Thank you.
Thank you. So one quick announcement. For more information on Raise the Age, including key information showing, for example, when you look at the caseloads, we can do it. When you look at cost, We can do this. So if you go back to the registration table, we have documentation laying out these key arguments in support of this bill so that you can now go forward and advocate with your own elected officials. But with that, I want to bring up our final panelist, my predecessor as Executive Director at Citizens for Juvenile Justice, Dr. Naoka Carey. Dr. Carey is a senior advisor for the Emerging Adult Justice Project. In that capacity, she advises jurisdictions on ways to make juvenile and adult criminal systems more developmentally appropriate and effective, including providing training, data analysis, and technical assistance. She is currently an acting professor at NYU School of Law, where she teaches first-year law students and conducts research on the impact of state policies and neighborhood contexts on adolescent development. She has previously worked as an attorney and advocate for children in the child welfare and she has a PhD in applied developmental and educational psychology from the Lynch School of Education and Human Development at Boston College and a JD from NYU School of Law, and she's still a member of the CFJJ family. Come on up now.
All right, so one of the fun things about being last to go is that everybody already says what you were going to say before you say it. So I want to be really brief, partly because I want to make sure we get a chance to answer questions from everybody. And I'm going to focus on two things. So first, I want to really get at this question of what works in preventing crime, because you've heard a lot about it. And I just want to reiterate that the research supports everything that you've heard from the panelists this morning. And then I want to talk a little bit about what's happening in other places and their experiences. All right, so let's get started with what works, especially why serving transition age youth in the juvenile system makes sense. So as you heard from everyone, this is the system that is most developmentally appropriate for this age group. We're talking about fundamentally high school age or close to high school aged young people with this bill. So 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And what we know is that adolescents in particular do better in systems that are tailored to their developmental needs. And this connects back to what we know from life course criminology and criminology research about what works to promote crime desistance, to prevent crime, to stop crime. And two things with adolescents make a big difference. The first is getting older. And that just happens, right? But that's what all the brain science is about. And I'm happy to answer lots of questions about the brain science if people want it. I'm not going to spend too much time. The other thing that we know from the desistance research is what works is reaching these important developmental milestones. So finishing school, getting a job, becoming independent, finding housing, all of those things. And all of those things tend to be messed up and sort of interfered with by adult systems in particular. And so what we know works instead to promote having those experiences are things that are available in the juvenile justice system. So robust educational services, including access to special educational services and accommodations, pediatric health and substance abuse services, much, much more effective. That's available in the juvenile system, is not generally available in the adult system. Age-appropriate community and restorative programs, staff that understand this age group and work with them regularly and really understand sort of, I love working with adolescents. Not everybody does. Youth workers are a special bunch, and you want people who really have that orientation. And just fundamentally getting to experience normative, age-appropriate experiences and go sort of on the way to adulthood are what leads to desistance. All right, so no additional training and sort of programming needed if you do that in the juvenile system, right? It's not that it's not possible in the adult system, but we already have a system that we've built, that we pay for, that does all of these things. So, quick sum up, juvenile system has more of the good, more educational services, often higher levels of supervision, lots and lots of accountability. Accountability is absolutely age appropriate, but it happens in a much more effective and developmentally appropriate way in the juvenile system. And then really importantly, records not available or not as widely available. So this is a huge benefit. There is a ton of research about records as a barrier. Records are a huge barrier, and this is one of the big upsides of the juvenile system. So also less of the bad. So as you heard from a number of people, isolation, trauma, assault, all of those things for young people who go into adult systems are much, much higher. Isolation sometimes to protect people, but isolation is incredibly detrimental to young people's well-being. And it's one of these sort of like things that can sort of get you off the path of normative development. And in the adult system, you have a much longer time after conviction to wait until your record is clear, which disrupts, again, those things like getting a job, finishing school, finding housing, all of those things that are not just associated with kind of growing up generally, but are associated with desistance from crime. So that's just to sort of reiterate, I think, everything that you've already heard, but it's really backed up by research, and I'm happy to talk about any of it more. So let's talk about why we should do it and what sort of the barriers are. And I think when people are asking me questions about like what is happening in other states, they're really asking, is it doable? Can we do it here in Massachusetts? What do they know about? What have they discovered for places that have been experimenting with this? So first of all, lots of states work with this age group. And in fact, there are whole countries where this age group is in their juvenile justice system. So there's a lot of experience working with this age group and working with this age group in their in the juvenile justice system. The Netherlands and Germany are two that the Emerging Adult Justice Project has toured and has a lot of relationships with. And I was part of, along with a number of people who from the State House, of a delegation that went and visited Germany and saw what it looks like there, and happy to talk about that more. But then I just want to emphasize, as Duci mentioned, DYS already works with this age group. We have a different jurisdictional age, but they see young people all the way up through 18, 19, 20. So they have experience with this age group. They know how to work with this age group effectively. So one state that has already raised the age is Vermont, and Vermont's experience has been really, really positive. So overall, very successful rollout. They've seen continuing reductions in their caseloads since they passed the law. So it hasn't led to some big, overwhelming sort of flood of cases. They've seen continuing reductions. It has been paused, but paused because Vermont closed their only secure youth facility. So they literally have no secure facilities for young people right now, and they wanted to pause while they figure out what they're going to be doing about secure placements. So that's the only reason they've paused, not because of other issues with the implementation. The other thing, and this Leon mentioned, and I know is in some of the materials that you all have, here in Massachusetts, we have capacity, right? So since we did the first raise the age, bringing 17-year-olds into the juvenile system in 2013, caseloads have continued to go way down. There is still capacity in the system to bring young people in. So we have a system that is designed for this age group, that is working for this age group, that has got great recidivism rates for this age group compared to the adult system, and we have capacity in it. It makes sense to use that system for this age group. Washington State is another state that has been exploring this change. They commissioned a full cost benefit analysis from the University of Washington. And I just want to, I can talk to you more about that as well, but I want to sort of emphasize the key findings. So first of all, overall cost savings is what they predict from their raise the age change. So net zero cost for courts and law enforcement. Basically, there will be increased costs potentially on the juvenile side, but those are offset by reduced costs on the adult side. But they also predict big cost savings from shifting young people from adult incarceration to juvenile rehabilitation. So just within the first year, they're predicting cost savings of between sort of right around $3 million. And then over 5 years, they're predicting cost savings of about $12 to $20 million. And I participated in doing the caseload analysis for Washington State. So if people want to get into numbers, I'm happy to talk about numbers. But that's pretty much it, because I want to really make space for our wonderful panel, who are incredible and really have covered everything. But I am happy to talk more about the research. I know there's a lot of different research and different sort of perspectives. There really are just reams of research about the advantages of the juvenile system in all sorts of different contexts. And there's some more limited research on raise the age interventions in particular, which I can talk about more. I will say that the research is actually very, very consistent that for young people, you get better outcomes in the juvenile system. And I can talk more about sort of some nuance in there, but that is really clearly the takeaway from the research. So, all right, thanks.
So you've heard from our experts from so many different perspectives, the research from the bench, from law enforcement, from the attorney perspective, most importantly, from the youth perspective, why this makes sense. But now I want to open up for questions for Q&A. I'd ask that any legislators or media members, please ask your questions first, and then we'll pivot to questions from just the general public. Don't be shy. All right, young man, go ahead. What's your question?
So, I'm saying Mr. True as somebody unsupportive of this bill, supportive of this bill. But my thing is that this language, having read it, this policy is neglectful of the people that have been compromised by the system, not who are being compromised by the system. Right, so one we're looking at in real time, right, and I want to be supportive of that. But then also as somebody who's been impacted by juvenile justice as it is today, right, as an emerging adult, having returned, I'm concerned with the fact that we're not addressing the need for those who are currently incarcerated, who have already been compromised by the language of this bill, and why the need for this bill is being implemented. Right, so so the question is, how is it that we don't neglect or carve out the people who are currently incarcerated that were compromised by this very subject, right? Because I also, when we speak to raise the age, this bill doesn't raise the age, it just catches up legislation with precedent and case law. Case law, with the Matt's decision, raise the age, right? But now, when we're talking about raise the age, we're looking at the science and we're looking at reports, right? I have an entire, collection of reports that address juvenile justice. And when we address juvenile justice, it doesn't stop at 18 to 21, right? It goes up to under the age of 25, scientifically. So how is it that we're not speaking about those who have been compromised between the 22 and 25?
So Duci, I have thoughts, but I'll hand to you.
Right. And I think, as Leon said before, the change is slow, it's incremental, but when we added 17-year-olds to the system, right, we were showing that this can work. But I get where you're saying that if we do this, what about all those other people that are still impacted by the inequities and the injustice in the system, right? I think we don't forget about those people, right? That's still part of the conversation. If we raise the age and we get 18 to 20-year-olds and we have the support and the data that shows this is working, there's nothing to stop us from asking for more. But as we know, we need that sort of data, the research to back it up, because that's sometimes just realistically what moves the needle. And you're absolutely right. In the cases of Diachenko and Mattis, you have jurists who are saying that this group of young people are different and should be treated differently within the legal system. So that case law also supports not only this legislation, but our advocacy in courts, both in the juvenile and the adult system, to say that the consequences should be different for this population of young people. I don't know if I directly answered your question.
Yeah. And I would just build upon it and say, to build on Duci's point, it's about consistently building. So a case like Mattis, that was a critical step because it was our Supreme Judicial Court affirming what we've been saying forever about adolescent development. But Mattis deals with one cohort of cases, life without parole cases. Now we're going to build on that and try to raise the age using that adolescent development argument to ensure that all young people between 18 and 20-year-old get that developmentally appropriate. So it's true, it's incremental, but there are steps. And, you know, I think the people at this table are proof that there are folks who dedicate their whole lives to continue to take as many steps as it takes to get where we need to go. Yes.
Can I just want to address, so being someone who's still in the system, still going into the court system, the courts do have adult diversion programs right now, all the way up to 25. I've seen it. I've had a case recently where they did it and they offered, and it was a pretty substantial case with a malicious destruction, over $30,000. And that person in that age group who was in their 20s, beyond what Raise the Age is talking about, was offered an adult diversion program because they didn't have a history of arrest or anything else. So they were given. So some of the courts and some of the counties are offering adult diversion programs.
Thank you. Any other questions?
In a sort of favor, you can vote, right? This is not like you raise the age and you forget about, you know, people who fall on the upper end of like their 20s. You can vote, as you highlighted. We can have 18 to 20-year-olds within the juvenile system, but knowing what we know about development and the science, we can treat that age population differently within the adult system, but on a higher. You know, I think there's this misconception that, okay, if we're doing it on the adult side, okay, we're all good. We don't need to do it on the juvenile side. I would, you know, beg to differ with that, because even in the adult system, we have all of the collateral consequences that interfere with your ability to have a successful, productive life. So I think it's about how do we do both and do it well. So it's not about forgetting about that population that is currently within the adult system. We need to do that.
And I would add, like, things like expungement, like, I think for those of us working in emerging justice, it is not all, like, raise the age, we think makes a ton of sense with this closest high school age group, because we have a juvenile system. But it's a lot to ask the juvenile system to take everybody all the way up to 25, even if that's what the break time said. So then the question is, like, what do we do right now to make things better for 21 to 25? The things that we can do are change the system and expansion. Expansion of records, and that goes for not just 21 to 25, I would say. Expansion of records is another big thing. That's a huge barrier for people in terms of these milestones. So I think moving as many trains forward as we can at the same time is part of the goal. This is where, like, we're here to talk about one of the trains, but it doesn't mean we're not, our eyes aren't also on the other ones. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it makes sense. But after everybody, the time, I do have follow-up questions from Officer.
Well, sir, because we're almost at time, I'm going to ask you to go up and speak to the panelists after. But thank you so much for your question. Really appreciate that. And if there's no other question, a question in the back, ma'am? Oh, yes. Yes, sir.
Hello, Nick, Coleman, Touchdown Lifer, and I want to say thank you for the Hines. I was incarcerated in 1990. I was 12 in the adult prison, and not only was it bad, but actually the 6 months of being in there, it put me on an administrative locker. I had to go install like one for all day at 17. For my 17th birthday. Excuse me, for my 18th birthday. But Geraldine Hines, I was a client at the time. I mean, I remember she went to the administration, tried to get me off administrative locker, didn't have it. And she came over a plan with her. She actually had black women from my firm come to see me 2 or 3 times a week, pull me out, talk to me. She was like, you're not being in 23 hours a day, right? It's not healthy for a child, right? I understand the time. I mean, but it actually affected me and impacted. So I just hope that this, whatever y'all doing here, is I listen to what she's saying, and do she's doing is something 1990.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. So you've heard from us, you've heard from our brilliant panel, but we didn't bring you here just to talk at you all for an hour. We brought you here to support our call to action. So raise the age. It is currently in the Senate before the Ways and Means Committee. And we're asking each and every one of you all to go to your senator, especially if your senator is on the Ways and Means Committee, but go to your senator in general and ask them to report the bill favorably for a Senate vote. A version of this bill passed the Senate last year. There is no reason why it should not pass again this year. So please go and contact your senators. Now in the House, as Jayden pointed out, the bill has been sent to study, but it ain't over. Say it again. Say it with me. Over. This is directly from Representative Cruz, who unfortunately out. Through partnership with the Black and Latino Caucus, we can resurrect the bill in the House. It's not over. So go to your House members, talk about it. We live in a representative democracy, meaning represent you, and they are supposed to carry forth your wishes and desires as your representative. So tell your House member you support it. You have the information from these brilliant panelists to back up that request, and ask them to support Raise the Age. Let's push in the Senate, let's push in the House, and let's get this done for our young people.